Okay, everyone, it's looking like noon straight up here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we get started on the main presentation, I just want to do a couple minutes of housekeeping here. We will be recording this session. This and the other two webinars will be available next week at the ccctechcenter.org website. And we will send a message out to the distribution list as soon as those are available. In addition, this webinar is being live captioned, and so you have the ability to turn on your closed captions. You should see it there in your Zoom interface. And beyond that, I think we're ready to get started here. John, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandoval. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm glad you had a chance to join us here during your lunch hour. Today, we're going to be covering the Multimedia service platform and talking about how we're going to be supporting the technology that's been developed to help support colleges prepare for going live with AB 705 implementation for English and for math this year. My name is John Haddad. I am the product manager for the Multimedia placement service. I've got 10 years of experience with working within higher education technology. I've been with the Tech Center since 2015. We started working on the Multimedia placement service back in 2018 with working out a proof of concept that enabled us to integrate with ERP and getting access to CalPass Plus data. And from there, it's expanded upon we've expanded on features and functionality as well as additional integrations to allow us to arrive at the version of the product that we have today. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Colorado. I live in Phoenix, so I'm a very, very much a remote. I work very, very remotely, and I love California. So fortunately, I've been able to be at several, the last 3 of the AB 705 workshops that the RP group, ERP, and the AB 705 advisory committee have been organizing. There's one more this week. Sandoval, I think, I know that the email that went out, I believe, had information about the last of the AB 705 workshops that are scheduled, which is this Friday at Mesa in the San Diego area, Mesa College in the San Diego area. So that the announcement that was sent out this week for this particular webinar has a link to register for the, I believe it has a link to register for the Mesa College AB 705 workshop. That if you're in the area, I know that they'd be happy to have you join them. So today we are going to be going over getting an overview of how MMPS works. We'll talk a little bit through the implementation requirements and what that looks like, as well as run through some frequently asked questions before we open up the conversation to the floor and have some questions any questions that might be outstanding. Please do feel free to leverage the chat functionality here inside of Zoom. If you have any questions as we're going along the way, we'll be sure to pause and answer any questions that you do have, as well as finally we'll wrap things up with talking a little bit about next steps for your college to integrate and gain access to the data that the Multiple Measures Placement Service is providing. And it looks like we have a comment in chat. Hi, John. This is Maya. Oh, hi, Maya. Okay, so we do have we have some folks that are here from CCGI, as well as from, I believe we got some folks from ERP that have joined us today. And so Maya is joining us from the California College Guidance Initiative, CCGI, and looks like we have Dan Lamery, who is here from ERP, and I'm not sure, is John Hetz on the call as well?
I'm here.
Hi, John. Awesome. So John has joined us from ERP as well. So before we get into this, what I want to do is just take an opportunity to really recognize the tremendous level of effort that has really gone into getting to where we are today. The AB 705 workshops that have been taking place have been a really great opportunity just to get a sense of the tremendous level of effort that has gone into preparing for AB 705 implementation for English and for math, with still a lot more work to do for ESL. There, when we look at the broad spectrum of things, AB 705 is one of those initiatives that has a huge impact, has had a huge impact on the system. And from a technology perspective, right, the technology is probably a little bit less significant than just the curricular changes. And so I just want to take an opportunity to recognize both at every kind of level throughout the system, there has really been a tremendous amount of effort put forward to get us to where we are, and just want to take an opportunity to recognize those efforts. So jumping in here, let's talk, we're gonna talk a little bit about how this came about. And so Multimedia Placement Service was developed in collaboration with the Chancellor's Office and the AB 705 Advisory Committee. We have some very interesting and some unique aspects of the development, in that there are multiple external partners that have collaborated together to develop the technology, gaining access to high school transcript information and multiple sources, and being able to execute the logic and pass that information over to the colleges so that we can help facilitate the sharing of the data, sharing of placement, recommended level of support for AB 705, as well as other additional information to the colleges. Our partners here, of course, the Tech Center has been involved, of course. California College Guidance Initiative has been engaged. They are an organization that provides resources and tools to college-bound high school students who are in the process of exploring their options, not only from an educational standpoint, but from an education goal perspective, but also being able to access information about colleges inside of California and kind of clearing that pathway into those colleges. So CCGI has an integration with CCC Apply, where a student who is interested in a college, a California community college, can launch directly into the application for that college from within their website, which is californiacolleges.edu. So they're partnering with high schools and high school districts throughout the state to offer their services to their students. And of course, Educational Results Partnership has been a great partner throughout this whole development process. We've engaged with them for quite some time. And as I said, that was kind of the initial proof of concept, was enabling an integration with ERP that started this whole process in the project, and has translated into a much more sophisticated project and product from the efforts of everybody that's been involved. So the way that we accomplish everything that we do inside of the service is through three relatively easy steps. So when our service goes into action, our first step is to search through and collect multiple data sources of high school transcript information for a specific student. And so we have access to two verified sources that we'll talk about here in a second, and then the self-reported information from CCC Apply when it's available. We consolidate that information down into a single repository, and then for processing. And then based on that, we generate, once we have all that information in one place, then we're ready to move into step 2, which is generating the recommended placements. And finally, step number 3 is delivering that placement information directly to the colleges. So to dig into each of these steps a little bit more, our workflow is triggered by the submission of an application on CCC Apply. And so whether a student is coming in from CCGI, or whether a student is going directly to CCC Apply to initiate the application, once that application has been submitted, and to be specific, it's the standard app for CCC Apply. So if your college uses the international app or the promise grant, formerly known as the BOG fee waiver, neither one of those application submissions triggers our workflow. It's just the standard app on CCC Apply that triggers our workflow. And so once our workflow gets triggered. Again, that first step is to go out and try to determine where transcript data may be and collect that data. So we have access, as of right now, we have access to 2 sources of verified high school transcript information, one being the California College Guidance Initiative. So through their network development and their partnerships with their high schools throughout the state, they gain access to their high school transcript information. And of course, CalPass Plus through ERP is data that, again, they've partnered with several districts and high schools throughout the states to have access to verified high school transcript information. So those are the 2 sources of verified information that we have. And then the third source that we currently have integrated with the application is the self-reported data from CCC Apply when a student is asked that information. Forthcoming development, the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding with the California Department of Education has recently been executed. And so we are in the process of analyzing the MOU and engaging with folks from the Department of Education to determine how we can, what type of data can we access, how can we use that data, what data can be shared. So some of those answers are still being worked out, and we'll be engaging with the Department of Education to gain access to that information and provide placements based on obviously a much larger coverage data set with CalPads. So once we've got that information all consolidated, what we do is we select a prioritized data set. So what that means is that when we if we were to have high school transcript information from CCGI, from CalPass, as well as self-reported information from the student directly inside of CCC Apply, we're going to select, we have a decision logic that determines which data set we're going to use. And to kind of explain that, when we have CCGI data, that is going to be the preferred source of data. CCGI has there's an aspect of the frequency of which their data is refreshed that makes it very appealing. So when a student is in their 12th grade and they're applying to colleges, CCGI has access to in-progress coursework that the student is currently enrolled in, and not just end-of-year transcript data. So their data set is very attractive. So anytime we have CCGI data, the placement will be based on CCGI data. When we don't have CCGI data, but we have CalPass Plus data, that would be the next preferred source, since it is verified transcript information. When we have CalPass Plus data, that will be the second choice. And then finally, when in the absence of any verified transcript data, and of course this would apply to all out-of-state students, right, who are graduating from inside of the United States, we're not going to have access to verified transcript for any non-California U.S. resident students. We will use the self-reported data. In the event where we do have CalPass Plus data and we have self-reported data, we are analyzing and evaluating both of those data sets together, and selecting the information from the combined set of verified and self-reported data that would result in the best placement for the student. And so that when we talk about a prioritized data set, that is the prioritization that we use for determining which data source is used as input into the decision logic. Then we actually execute the decision logic and generate the placements. And so there are basically 2 sets of decision logic that we execute. There is the statewide AB 705 decision logic that would result for English and math. And then we also are executing the statewide MMAP decision logic, and that is specifically to provide placements into higher level math courses when students qualify for that. So specifically, the AB 705 placements result in recommended level of support. So all students are going to be basically assuming that they're going to go into they're eligible and have access to enroll into transfer level English and math. And depending on their pathway, will choose one of the math pathways to go based on their educational goals. But we will be providing information, since we don't have access to career ed goals for specific students. For each student, we will be providing both the statistics and liberal arts math level of support, as well as the STEM level of support for math. And then from the higher level math placements, when applicable and the student does qualify, we'll be providing binary true-false flags as to whether the student is eligible to register for either trigonometry, pre-calculus, or calculus. So those are the placements that will be delivered, and again, using the statewide decision logic for AB 705 and for higher level math placements. Once placement has been achieved and determined, then we're ready to pass that information over to the colleges. And so we deliver this information through a direct integration with the college that can be achieved in one of two ways. So colleges now have an option in terms of how they'd like to receive data from MNPS. Colleges can receive this in a downloadable CSV file that leverages, it does leverage superglue. It's technology. If your college, for instance, is currently gaining access to the LGBTQ report, that infrastructure that's used to deliver access to that report is the same infrastructure that we're leveraging to deliver the MMPS data via a CSV file. So that's one option for receiving the data. The second option is a bit of a tighter coupling between MNPS and your student information system that writes to staging tables that are part of the SIS and the staging tables that are deployed as part of the implementation process for MMPS. We'll be writing that information directly to the table. And there is, it's one table as of right now. It's a pretty simplified data dictionary that will write all of that information for your college to that one staging table, and that is enabled through the college adapter through superglue. So either one of those processes is going to give your college access to the data that's available from MMPS. From there, you have local determination as to how you're going to actually use that data. And I will say that from an expectations perspective, the Chancellor's office is expecting that every college is going to have access and bring this data into their college. How they use that data is, again, going to be locally determined. So a lot of colleges are looking at integrating the data into locally developed tools for AB 705. So being able to provide the information to students through the locally developed tools. Other colleges are simply collecting this data to gain access to the input elements. And some other colleges are using the placements and the data as a way to compare against and evaluate their locally developed rule set. Maybe your college is tweaking the math requirements for identifying students who need some level of support to successfully complete your math course locally. And so some colleges are looking to gain access to what would the statewide decision and results be, and how does our placements and our recommended level of support based on how you've developed your local decision logic, how does that compare? So for evaluative perspective, from a evaluative perspective, you're able to analyze and compare your local recommended level of support to what would have been available to the students via the statewide decision logic. So that information, that's all locally developed to determine exactly how your college is going to leverage that data. So to look at this and kind of see this from a graphical perspective, as we can see here, it's the application process that we're dependent on. So once the application has been submitted, that student hits the submit button on the application. There's some additional processing that goes through on the CCC Apply side of things. One is we'll filter out any spam applications. So any applications that are currently being filtered out through the spam filter, none of those applications will be evaluated for placement unless they're manually cleared through the administrative functions inside of CCC Apply. So once those applications have made it onto a queue, we're listening for those applications, and that kicks off the multiple measures placement process, which then we'll go and for that specific student attempt to collect and gather any verified and self-reported data that we have available for that student, bring that into the rules engine to generate the placements for English and math and for the higher level math, and then pass that information over to the college, as well as consolidate that data into the Chancellor's office data warehouse to enable any additional and ongoing research and validation of the placements for AB 705. Okay, technical requirements. So MMPS is a pretty lightweight application that doesn't require a lot of local software, local maintenance. The use of CCC Apply is required, and I forgot, I need to update this on my slide here, forgive me. So I have this opt-in to self-reported high school transcript questions inside of CCC Apply is one of the things that's required. Those questions have now been activated for all colleges that are currently using CCC Apply. So we are now collecting the self-reported data from all students who graduated within from a US-based high school within the past 10 years. So that's the functionality that collects that self-reported high school transcript information directly from the student. So we do have a hard requirement for use of CCC Apply. Second requirement is that we've implemented, that selected SIS integration. So either the CSV downloadable file or writing to the staging tables enables the functionality to be able to deliver the data to your school. And then again, finally, any additional processing on the data that would integrate the data with your local tools and ultimately result in the registration system being updated to allow the student to continue with the matriculation process. That again is locally determined how you will use that data to get to that point where the students are able to successfully register for their coursework. Okay, so that's the overview as well as the technical requirements for MNPS. Now I'm going to jump into some frequently asked questions about the service itself. So question number one, how will students receive their placement recommendations? As of right now, the current version of MMPS does not support delivering placement directly to students. Our vision for doing that is to leverage an integration with MyPath that would allow us to deliver the messaging, include messaging, deliver the placements, and make sure that students are receiving the information about how what their placement means, making sure that we're in alignment with, I believe, AB 1805, as well as is another requirement that from a communications perspective requires that colleges communicate, have what the impact to students of what it means to be able to have access to transfer level English and math, along with the explanation of the recommended support structure, the support structure that's in place to help students get through the transfer level coursework successfully. So we envision leveraging MyPath for that communication and messaging directly to students. And that's work that we're anticipating to complete within the 1920 fiscal year. Next question, what if self-reported data would result in a more accurate recommendation? So this was a requirement that came directly from the field through the AB 705 advisory committee, in that we've seen instances where comparing specifically with the CalPass Plus data, which is end of year data. So for a student who's currently enrolled in high school, the most recent verified transcript data that we would have for that student is their 11th year completion data. So students could be reporting information that would be more accurate on the self-reported. And so that is the reason why we're evaluating both CalPass Plus data, as well as the self-reported data that the student has provided on the application together to arrive at the best placement for the student. Next question. Can we customize the decision logic to locally defined thresholds for level of support? So as of right now, we only support the statewide decision logic for both AB 705 as well as for the higher level math placements. We don't have any support for local customization of that. Not sure exactly where we'll end up with this one. We're still waiting to determine exactly how many colleges are intending to veer away from the statewide decision logic, and based on that information, that may drive our our decision to enable and support the customization of that decision logic. But as of right now, we don't have any specific plans to support that. Colleges who have adopted some variations from the statewide decision logic can gain access to the verified transcript data that we have through the data dictionary of the data that we're delivering to your college. So in terms of usability of the data that we're providing, your college would still be able to use some of the data that we're providing and generate your own locally determined recommended level of support and or higher level math placements. Next question. How do we place students for whom we do not have any data? So for every single student who applies to your college, you'll be, through the standard app from CCC Apply, you'll be receiving a record from us that will either include the placement recommendations because we have data for that student, or you'll be notified that we did not have any data, meaning that we didn't have any verified data and the student was not asked to provide to respond to the self-reported questions inside of CCC Apply. And so in that situation, we'll notify you that we made an attempt to generate placement, but unfortunately we came up empty-handed from a data perspective and no placement was generated for a specific student. Students who, in that situation, who do require matriculation, who don't have any data, the Chancellor's Office distributed guidelines for developing local guided self-placement processes that will exchange information, collect information from the student and guide and direct the student towards registration process based on the information that the student has provided in that guided self-placement process. Which of course is the next question about, does MNPS support guided self-placements? As of right now, we do not support guided self-placement. In engaging with the AB 705 advisory committee, we're looking to gain some insights and some answers into how desirable it would be from the field to have the ability to offer a statewide guided self-placement process that could be delivered through MyPath that would allow colleges to program questions and questionnaires or surveys, any kind of information that you determine is necessary to get from a student that would result in you being able to say, here's what your next step should be based on the information that you provided. So not currently part of the functionality, but certainly something that we're considering supporting in the future. And finally, what data will my college receive? So the link here on the bottom of this slide is everybody will be able to distribute this deck out to everybody, and the link on that slide gives you access to the implementation guide. Part of the implementation guide, which covers kind of all of the features and functionality and explanation of the decision logic and how we're arriving at placement, also identifies the data dictionary and the elements that you'll be receiving from MMPS. But to give at a high level, it's a combination of the placement information, identifying information. So CCC ID is going to be the primary identifier for the student. So you can match the placement recommendations to the student inside of your registration system. we identify the data source from where the placements are coming. So if we have a we have codes for each data source. So whether it's CCGI, CalPass Plus, the self-reported data, or the combination of self-reported data and CalPass Plus data, we identify the data sources that the placements are based on, along with the input elements. So when we have the GPA, the highest level of English and math courses completed, and the respective grades, we provide that information to your college as part of the record for that student. Additionally, we also provide flags to identify whether or not a student has completed Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. And I'm going to pause here for a second and see if I can post into chat here. No, I don't. Let me see here. I'm going to pause my share here for a second while I get the link to the implementation guide. Okay. I just posted that. Can somebody click on that? Does somebody mind clicking on that link and just confirm that that works to gain access to that? Confirm. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. So question in the chat is, when will this data be made available to colleges? So we are in the process of getting ready to turn MNPS to activate it on production. Right now we have had multiple colleges executing pilot testing and have helped verify that things are working exactly as we expect. So we are in the process this week of getting ready to deploy, to do a super glue deployment and to production. I believe on Thursday is when we're planning to do this. And so that will allow us to turn the system on. And what our plans are is to have the system on and running, generating the placements without necessarily delivering directly to colleges. This will allow us to do some initial testing, and then we'll basically be able to, we actually have one college who's going to be an early adopter that's been kind enough to offer up to be a guinea pig and try things out initially on production. So once we've verified that is working exactly the way that we expected, at that point we'll start rolling this out on a general availability for production. For colleges who are looking to adopt MMPS, for college, we basically would set you up inside of the pilot environment and do some testing locally so that you can gain access to test data in a non-production environment. And then once your college has confirmed that the data is coming across successfully to your adapter and you're getting information into the staging table, at that point, we could start writing that information out to your staging tables on production. And again, of course, there's the aspect of the locally developed processing to take that information from the staging table into your core tables that would need to be developed and executed to make to have everything fully functional on a production perspective. Next questions. What plans are underway to accommodate ESL placement? So as of right now, our team has not been engaged in the ESL development perspective. I know that the memo regarding ESL, I believe, came out within the last couple of weeks. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion on the listservs regarding the information that's come out. So as of right now, we haven't arrived at any hard requirements for developing MMPS to support ESL. I know that that's forthcoming, and we should be kicking that off with the AB 705 advisory group within the next 2 to 4 weeks, I would imagine, is when that would start taking place. Kicking things off. Just taking to see if I have any other questions there. Okay, let's see. Can CCC Apply be modified to allow students to choose an actual program of study so that placement can be in alignment with guided pathways? Carrie, that's a great question, and I'm not sure that I'm in the best position to answer that question. I'm trying to see if we have anybody here. I know that the changes to CCC Apply are a bit out of my control, as I'm not the CCC Apply product manager. But that's certainly something that I can follow up and ask about. I know that that there's some challenges in terms of just how much CCC Apply can be tweaked for from a general perspective to localized information. But again, I'm not the product manager, so I'll have to follow up with Patty to ask about that question. But thank you for asking that. And then Adrian's asked, how is equity being addressed through these data practices and guidance? And I think that John Hetz, are you able to answer that question?
Well, one of the things that we've done very carefully is look to make sure that the changes that are coming from AB 705 help all of the groups. And so far they do, like making sure that students have access to transfer level courses really improves the long-term outcomes for every major equity group that we can identify so far. We will continue to do so. There are a couple where we only have small sample sizes initially, but we are continuing to watch for that. And of course, the colleges remain responsible for checking the local equity consequences for all implementation of assessment and placement. So the expectation will continue to be that colleges continue to do that work to make sure that the outcomes for their students are equitable, and that if there are any disparate impacts, that the college is working on closing them.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Next question there is about, can I ask about international students? Do we have an approved plan to place them? So international students, and of course, depending on which college you represent, from college to college, the international student population is more significant for some colleges than others. And so international students are a little bit of a unique in that some of them may have high school transcript information. It's the apples to oranges comparison of transcript information that are non-US based transcripts that makes it a little bit difficult to normalize or be able to equate foreign transcripts with US based transcripts. And so I believe because of that, and John Hetz can correct me if I'm wrong here, but for international students, it's your locally developed guided self-placement process that would be used to place those international students, along with any other counseling visits or any other processes that you may have locally developed. John, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's essentially correct. There are a few colleges that have a sufficient number of students from one country that they are looking into other methods using student performance in that country, but most colleges aren't in that position. And I can go ahead and answer the next question from Oliver. The upper level math recommendations are based off the multiple measures assessment project, the phase 2.0 decision trees, all the stuff that's currently published on the multiple measures assessment project website.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Oh. Let's see. To follow up on the deployment schedule for non-guinea pig schools, roughly, are we looking at this summer or closer to the end of the year, next year? For our particular college, we have not had a great experience with Project Glue, so would probably opt for the CS delivery for now. So, Sumner, that based on our deployment schedule, since we're attempting to go live this week with MMPS on production and bringing on the one school who's going to be testing things out shortly thereafter, I would imagine that we're probably looking at anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks before we would start devising a general availability rollout plan to give access to all of the colleges and to give the data access to all the colleges. In order to do that, essentially our wonderful enabling services team and the CRMs that are working directly with your college are going to be working together we're going to be all working together to help coordinate and schedule follow-up conversations with your college to identify the next step from a technical perspective in terms of implementing the necessary framework that is in place. And again, getting everything either from the CSV delivery or through the direct writing to the staging tables, getting that infrastructure in place, running through things in a pilot environment and making sure that the data is coming across successfully in a non-production environment before moving things over to production. So depending on resourcing on your side of things, resourcing on the tech center side of things, and schedules, we anticipate being able to accommodate getting schools up as quickly as possible to be in compliance with the kind of the milestone and the timeframes that are being prescribed by AB 705. So if you're ready to start engaging in those conversations, I'm going to put the email address for the CRMs that you're going to want to email. And so it's CRMS at ccctechcenter.org. And if you can either reach out directly to your CRM if you know who that individual is, or you can email this email address, and it will be routed to the appropriate CRM for your college, and they will initiate the process of coordinating that next step in the conversation, which is regarding the technical implementation and getting things up and running from the implementation perspective. And I'm not sure, is there anybody from, I see our CRMs on here. Is there anybody from enabling services that want to speak specifically to those next steps?
Yeah, this is Andy. I can speak to that a little bit. I run the enabling services group for the Tech Center. And I just added a note in the chat that we're having some problems today with the CRMs at ccctechcenter.org email address. We've had a couple people that have experienced a bounce back. So I've simply put my email address in there. You can contact me directly, and I can get you connected with your college relationship manager to start dialogue and any work that you'd like us to perform there. So once that's the case, we can essentially, what we'll do is create a internal project. We'll assign an implementation project manager to coordinate with you to make sure that we get MMPS set up for you in a way that is comfortable for what you're trying to accomplish.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
And then you'll also have my email address. So any kind of product specific questions that you might be inquiring about, you can feel free to email either your CRM or myself. And we'll make sure that we get any additional questions that you may have that we didn't have a chance to cover today answered for you.
Hi, John. We've got one more question here. I think that we may not have answered yet. It says, can you confirm if AB 705 is applied to U.S. resident citizen only?
That's a good question.
John, I'll go ahead and take that because it's kind of related to the how to deal with international students and how to test them. And part of the question is whether or not you're allowed to use standardized test. And the guidance for ESL just came out, I want to say, what are we at? Like just under 2 weeks ago now. And very specifically, the law does not require, I'm just going to read from the guidance. The law does not require the elimination of placement tests for ESL at this time, nor does the law disallow the use of placement tests for students. Placement tests for credit ESL are not discriminatory under AB 705 or California Education Code. So right now, there may be some ongoing possibility for continuing to use standardized tests for placement in ESL, so long as you have the same evidence that you've had in the past for their utility. They still have to be evidence-based. You still have to do all the things that you normally had to do before, but for the time being at least, and looking forward into the future, I've heard folks from the Chancellor's office talk about this at the last few AB 705 convenings that we've had, that the anticipation is that there will likely continue to be a test available for ESL for some time. And if you're using one, the best thing you can do is marshal all the evidence you have for its effectiveness, and bring that to the AB 705 implementation committee, to the Chancellor's office, and specifically the subgroup of the ESL subgroup of the AB 705 implementation work group.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Okay.
You bet. And I'm also going to put the link to the guidance in the chat right now.
Awesome. John, do you happen to have the registration link for the San Diego workshop as well?
Oh yeah, I'll grab it and put it in next. So what John's referring to is we have one last regional workshop. We've been meeting with colleges across the state. The last one is on Friday from 9 until 2 at San Diego Mesa College. They will be hosting us this Friday. So I'll post the registration link. We still have some spots available if people are in the San Diego region or further away and are willing to come down and join us. John is going to be presenting again, and we'll have colleges, San Diego Mesa, like Irvine College, Southwestern College, Saddleback, and Camaca and Grossmont, and a few others to talk about what they've been doing and implementing these changes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. We'll give everybody a few minutes back in their day. Really appreciate your time and your joining us today during your lunch hour. And we'll look forward to visiting with you all again soon when we start talking about your local implementation.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your attendance today.
Thank you.
Everybody, and just give them a second if they want to click on that link before we close down the Zoom on everyone.
Yeah,
sure.
That's a good idea.
Got it. Okay, it looks like most people have left the meeting at this point. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and officially end the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.